All right. Members of the subcommittee are hereby advised of their duty under the State Government Ethics Act to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before this subcommittee with respect to which there is a conflict of interest or appearance of conflict. Is anyone aware of any conflict of interest or any appearance of a conflict that they need to make the subcommittee aware of?
No.
Nope. All right, then we can proceed. Peter, you're on.
Dayton, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Peter Bolak. I'm at the State Bar, Assistant Executive Director at the bar, and work with Deborah with the CLE program. We're really glad to have you. Would you mind kind of very quickly introducing yourself to Judge Keever and Bert?
Sure. It's my privilege to serve with you. I've gone far too long without doing any work with the State Bar. I was very active in the North Carolina Bar Association for many years. I migrated from Texas to Boone, North Carolina in 1988 with 5 children under the age of 9 and my wife and mother-in-law, and made that move cross country. And it turned out to be a great move for me professionally and for the family. I served for 30 years as in-house counsel for Appalachian State University, retired in 2018, and thought I was going to start a mediation practice. Then the pandemic happened, and as great luck would have it, I had a colleague in Raleigh contact me last fall about serving as interim general counsel for Campbell University. And I did that starting October 1, and one thing led to another, and I've wound up serving as deputy general counsel now on an indefinite basis. So what I thought was going to be a 2 or 3 month project has turned into something that's much more full-time and occupying me, and I'm very happy. I tell people I failed retirement.
Well, we now have a very good contingent from up in Watauga, and so it's on this board we have Paul Capua and Judge Eggers are both on the CLE board, and so we have I think we need to do our next meeting up in Boone, maybe over at Chitola or something, and have a CLE board retreat up there. Save you guys from having to travel.
Well, I spend most of my time in Booze Creek now.
Okay.
I'm in my home office in Boone right now, but I'll be heading back down there this evening. And my typical routine is to work down there 5 days a week and come back to Boone on the weekends. But I'll be glad to meet with you wherever.
Well, today we're working real hard on getting the CLE and membership database rolled out. I think this software project is going very well that we've been working on, and the hope is I think it's potentially sometime this week, at the end of this week, we'll be able to go live with it, at least internally, and then go live with it for the lawyers, for all the members at the beginning of next week. We'll know here in the next day or two if that's still in the cards, but I think you guys are going to be really pleased with the product that we're putting out. It's going to be great for lawyers to have all of their State Bar information and requirements dealt with in one portal, the ability to see their CLE courses. We have a really neat way of now displaying how your CLE progress is going. Let me see if I can actually pull it up to share, give you guys a quick little preview. And we think all of this is going to be very well received by the lawyers. I'll share my screen here so you can just kind of see that in the test environment. this is my page, and we like these status bars here. I think this is going to be something lawyers will appreciate, that we'll be able to show you for your CLE requirements for the year what you have remaining and what is still outstanding for you for your CLE requirements. We have still the standard compliance table here, although we have moved these columns around to be a little more clear so people can understand what they have still required. You'll have the ability to pay your invoices right here online, track your courses. It'll let you know whether any of them are tech courses. In this same portal, we're going to have, your balances for all the different departments, your membership balance, your CLE, if you're a specialist or if you have a professional organization, will all be here with the ability to pay, lump them together, make one payment for all the different items that you owe, or separate them out as your choice. If you were a specialist, you could go onto your specializations page and track your certification dates, do your recertification. You can apply to be a specialist online here now without having to do the paper application. In ethics, you can be in the portal and actually request ethics advice. They're loading some new stuff in right now. It's a little slow, but you could actually request ethics advice through your lawyer portal, send a secure inquiry to the ethics department. And by doing that, you'll be able to go back later and see your inquiry and the advice that you got right here in the portal. It'll stay with your record, so you'll be able to track all of your ethics opinions that you received. You'll be able to do pro hoc vice registrations and applications, all of this in one nice clean portal that will be accessed in the same way that you used to access your account on the website. So we're really excited for it. We think it's going to be a much better process for lawyers to just have it all in one place, not have to log into two different places to do all of their state bar requirements. So that's just a little portal of a little preview of the portal. But today's meeting is really about the rules review, and I've been working on a draft of rule amendments for you to review. But really, I've put together a list of questions that this subcommittee still needs to come down with an answer on, and we don't have to answer them today. In fact, we're not going to answer them today, but there is a list of things that this committee is going to need to decide, and I will share this with you after the meeting. I'll send this and my proposed current draft of the full rule amendments that I've been working on. But the first thing to share is this set of questions that the subcommittee is going to need to answer. The first is, what should be the CLE year? I know that we have discussed whether lawyers we should end the year at the end of February, because that's what lawyers are comfortable with. That's been the tradition, that CLE typically, lawyers get all of their CLE in January and February. But that does, create a year that is odd. It's not really a calendar year. It's not a standard kind of fiscal year. We could probably make that work, but that's the first option. That's what I have in the draft right now, is the CLE year being March 1st to February 28th, and eliminating the idea of a grace period. This is just the year that it is. There's no extra 2 months to get it done. It's just a 12-month period that ends in February. Option 2 would be to end it in December and have a clean calendar year, January to December. There's certainly some benefits to that, but I think we can all also imagine the difficulties of lawyers trying to get their CLE completed in December during the holidays. And that would require kind of a philosophical shift for lawyers on when they're taking their CLE. And then if there's another idea of the committee, that's certainly something we could entertain. The second question is the reporting period. We've talked to a few states that have longer than a reporting period of longer than 1 year. And I think that's really the preference of the staff and from what I've heard so far of the committees to move to either a 2 or 3 year reporting period. I was concerned initially about a 3 year period, but in talking with some of the states that have a 3 year period, they didn't seem to feel that has caused a problem with lawyers taking all 36 hours in the last month or anything like that, that this gives the lawyers the autonomy and liberty to decide when to take those courses over a 3 year reporting period. And so that's what I've drafted so far, is had it planned as a 3 year period. And we can go at these one at a time to talk, but really these are the things we need to be considering. The third item is carryover credit, and the options would be, eliminate the idea of carrying over excess credits to the next reporting period, or allowing it. And if you want to allow it, how much do you want to allow? I think my recommendation would be to eliminate carryover credit, especially if we have a 3 year reporting period, that everything just erases at, after the 3 year period. There's certainly, we could develop and program it in a way that you could carry over 12 hours to your next reporting period or carry over something, but the cleanest way would be to just cut it off every 3 years and you start over. That's something that the committee will have to come to a decision on. And then as it relates to credits, how many credits will we require? Right now I have it drafted as 36 hours over 3 years, because that's just 12 times 3. And if that's the case, I have it recommended that we would just multiply the 2 ethics requirements by 3 year period and make it 6 ethics hours in the 3 year period. And then 1 each of your substance abuse, tech, and then if we include the diversity, inclusion, and elimination of bias credit, then it'd be 1 of that as well. So it would reduce your tech requirement down from 1 every year to 1 every 3 years, but it would keep your substance abuse requirement the same, because that's currently the rule, is you have to have 1 every 3 years, and it would add the diversity credit. So that's kind of the what's in the draft right now. But if we had a desire to increase those, we certainly could. I think it's nice and clean to just say you have 1 each of your specialty credits that you have to take in your reporting period. But that'll be a decision we still have to make. So we drafted this temporary rule for 2022 that would require that all lawyers complete a diversity, inclusion, and elimination of bias training course, 1 hour. The rule has been submitted to the Supreme Court. We haven't heard back from them. I think the longer that we stretch into the end of this year, the less likely it is that rule will become effective. So we will have to put it back to the drawing board on whether we want to include this requirement in this program in the revision of the rules as a more permanent rule. We still have the language, we could include it, but that's a decision that we would have to make in terms of recommending that this remain a permanent feature in the credit requirements, potentially 1 every 3 years for lawyers. One that, an item that I gave a lot of thought to earlier in the year, but haven't really revisited, is how would we stagger and divide the lawyers into these reporting periods? There certainly is, we could do it by year of admittance. If we did a 2 year period, you could do even and odd, or a 3 year period, you could just divide their year. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it, because then when you have a new group that comes in, they all are just set on the same path. And so they would have the same kind of 3 year requirement for everybody who's admitted in that year. Instead of it being by bar number, which will split each split all the lawyers up, it won't be really easy to understand who's in which group. Just be whatever random bar number you had, and then name. You could do it by admitting, what was your, last name letter when you were admitted, but people's names change, and that might create confusion. And so my recommendation would be do it by admitting year, but we could certainly revisit that, or even break it down by specific years where you have, people from 1980 to 2001, or 2002 to 2009, or something like that. But I think my recommendation would be year of admittance. I think might be the easiest way to do it. Should we change the amount of credit we give to speakers? Right now, I have it drafted to keep the rule as it is, which is really, you get 3 hours of credit for every 30 minutes that you speak. We think of it as 6 hours, for an hour, but it's really drafted as 3 hours for every 30 minutes. Should we change that? Should we reduce it? Would that be a disincentive to finding speakers for CLE courses? And then one that we have, we've touched on but not talked about too closely is, should we give credit for other non-CLE activities? Should there be credit given for some sort of pro bono work or mentoring? Should we allow more self-study for lawyers to get CLE credit? Should service on the bar, for instance, service on the ethics committee, give you CLE credit? Or maybe submitting scholarly articles to the State Bar Journal, should that get you credit? That's actually something that Georgia does, that they offer 6 hours of CLE credit if you submit and get published a scholarly article for their bar journal. So it's some sort of incentive to write some treatise or something on the law, or explanation of the law, get you some of that CLE credit for doing it.
Peter,
Yes.
do we have anything, do we give credit now for non-CLE activities?
We do have some, you could call it non-CLE activities. You can get credit for teaching a law school class, or teaching a law class in an undergraduate environment, or a paralegal environment. We give credit for taking certain law classes that, not while you're a law student, but for taking certain classes at law schools. We give CLE credit for training, legal aid doing a training for you to take, do a wills, to help someone with their will. You can get that training portion can get counted as CLE. There's a little bit amount of, Deborah, am I missing any other ones?
We also give CLE credit for topics that might cross, like
right.
accounting courses that might cross, academic lines, if you will. But I think you hit on the others.
Yeah. So go ahead, Bert.
No, go ahead.
I was just pulling up the rule to look and make sure I wasn't missing any.
So these non-CLE activities that you just listed, is it all in the rules under one place, or is it in various places throughout the rules?
It is all typically in rule 0.1602, but it's the way I have it drafted makes it all in one rule that would be a lot more clear, and it would be called credit for non-traditional programs and activities. And so that's where we would add it. Teaching law school courses, service to the profession training, in-house CLE, which we do, we don't normally allow, but we allow it in very, very in a very limited capacity. You can get you do not get credit for taking a bar review course. So say you wanted to get licensed in another state and wanted to take a bar review course that does not qualify you for CLE credit. And it doesn't give you, you don't get credit for any educational activities that are designed primarily to sell services or to generate revenue. But we haven't discussed, and we have discussed kind of informally, but in not full detail, whether we want to add credit for pro bono work or being a part of a registered mentoring program. And that's something that we'll have to nail down as we go forward.
Thank you.
One item that I've been really focusing on is trying to streamline the non-compliance timeline, and how long it takes for someone who is not compliant to be ultimately suspended for their non-compliance. As of now, if you are not compliant with your CLE in a given year, it can take till the end of that year, of the following year to be suspended for it. And so looking at ways to streamline that by combining the notice to show cause and suspension order into one order instead of it being a two-step process, and making sure that whatever we do, that due process is still afforded, and that we don't run afoul of that requirement for lawyers. But trying to make that, especially with the better software that we'll have, an easier way of getting these created and sent out, and obviously having to schedule that around making sure that the council weighs in as necessary on various things to try to streamline that a little bit to get this process kind of completed early in the fall instead of late in November or December or something like that. So that's something that I'll share with you, and that we'll have to discuss if we want to recommend changing how that whole administrative process works. And then an item that we have discussed a few times is, should the state bar provide free CLE on its website? Our thought was 1 hour of each specialty would be provided every year for lawyers to take for free, especially if we implement and get approved an annual CLE fee for lawyers. Let's say it's $10 or $20 that they'd pay as part of their membership dues. Offsetting that by providing 3 hours of free CLE, I think would be appropriate to do for us. It would still ultimately be a cheaper cost of licensure for lawyers, because right now it's considered part of the cost of licensure is the attendance fee per credit hour that lawyers have to pay. And often it's paid by sponsors, but sometimes lawyers have to pay it of the $325 per credit hour. So multiply that by 12, that's 40 or about $40. And so this would be a cheaper way for lawyers, since we're not going to have attendance fees, and we could provide CLE credit for the, free CLE for them to take. So that's, we've never really done that on a consistent basis. And so that would be a little bit of a change for us, as providing some CLE, but certainly in the fields of substance abuse, technology, and diversity and inclusion, I think we'd be able to provide good content for lawyers, and something that we could update and change every year, those 3 courses. Excuse me. So those are the real items to consider, that we need to really nail down. As far as the timeline goes, I think if we can meet again either in December or early January to make some of these bigger decisions and really look at the language of the rules, it would certainly be great to have some of this prepared to present in some way to the council in January. It's not necessarily required to get this stuff done before 2023. I think if we did it in April, we could still publish it then and approve it in July, and have it sent to the court, in the fall, and have it in place for 2023. but it would be nice to have get this thing moving in a way that we can get some actual substance submitted to the council for its review.
So Peter, when are we thinking about an in-person retreat at Pinehurst?
I would like to do that at the sometime at the beginning of the year. We need to check with Pinehurst on availability and everyone's availability, but if we could find a way to do that in the second week of January or something like that, that would be a way to really have the time to sit down and really look at this stuff. And that's that it's relatively soon. It's going to come up faster than we think, and so we'll have to check with Pinehurst on all of that. If we have to move it to after the January meeting, we could, and we could do that at the beginning of, we could meet in Pinehurst sometime in early February. But I think that would be those would be our goals. So is there anyone who want to chat about these and kind of just offhand now, or do we want to kind of look at the draft I've put together, or just kind of scroll through that and I can give you a little summary of what I've done?
I do have a couple of questions.
Okay, sure.
On several of these, I'm wondering if we have data from other states to compare, see where North Carolina stands in relation to other state bars in terms of for example, the number of hours we require for CLE each year, the types of education we require, and whether we grant credit for these non-CLE activities, all those things. I'm wondering how we compare to other states.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Dayton. I will share with you the data from the other states. Since you've kind of gotten thrown into this right here in the middle, we've looked at comparing and looking at other states in these areas, and I have survey data that I can share with you, so you can kind of see what other states do. Just off the top of my head, 12 hours is pretty standard for an annual CLE requirement, and so and then I don't think about a little less than half of the states have a more than 1 year requirement. Maybe a quarter of the states have more than 1 year requirement. But we're pretty much in line with most of the requirements, except for the fact that we do not charge a course application fee, and we charge an attendance fee instead of a course application fee, which most states go the other way and have a course application fee and are not charging for attendance on the back end, and that causes us problems because we become bill collectors instead of having the fees up front and not charging lawyers this $3.25 per every hour that they take. As it relates to non-CLE activities, it's all over the map. There are some states that do give some credit for pro bono or mentoring and self-study. It's not the majority. It's a minority of states that do that, but there are some examples we could follow if that's the path we wanted to take of allowing credit for those types of activities. We've historically taken the stance that CLE is intended to improve the competence of a lawyer, and so whatever we do and approve should be under that umbrella. I think there's a good argument that pro bono and mentoring could fit that bill, but we've certainly studied mentoring in the past over the last decade or two in the CLE committee. That's been a topic that's been brought up multiple times, and we've yet to have a recommendation from the board to add CLE credit for mentoring, but it has been a topic that's been under study before. But I'll send you all of that information, Dayton, so you can take a look at it.
Thank you.
Bert?
Peter, as it is no shock, I will give you, my quick thoughts about what I see. I like the reporting period being 3 years. I think it's good symmetry, 3. I don't think there should be any carryover credit. I guess my theme has always been the KISS, the acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid, or keep it simple, silly. If you don't want to offend anybody, it's just, and we just need to tighten it up. I am personally, lawyers don't like change. Okay. And I think COVID has put change on the front burner because we've been made to do a lot of things that we're not comfortable doing. And so anything that we want to change, I think we should just rip the Band-Aid off and do it, if that's what we want to do. To say that with regards to the CLE year, I think the CLE year should end into December. That's when we pay our bar dues. They've got now 3 years to get their 36 hours done. They can now do it all online, and in the history of our great profession, it is easier to get CLE done than any other time, because all attorneys have had to deal with this virtual Zoom and upgrading their bandwidth and upgrading their computers in order to continue practicing law and making any money. I think we should not do any type of carryover credits. I think it's 36 hours. I think that I love the fact that there is a specialty credit hour. You got 3 of them over 3 years. The substance abuse, the tech, and the diversity. I think we need to include diversity. Diversity and the inclusion and elimination bias, that isn't going anywhere. Whether we as an agency stick our head in the sand or not, that isn't going anywhere. And I think that if we have people on one side wanting it to have every year, then we have people on the other side not wanting to have it at all, I think 1 hour every 3 years is something that I would hope that practical people looking at it and looking towards the future, that we could sell it, and we could sell it to not just the bar membership, but we could sell it hopefully to the Supreme Court, because it is just, it's here. And I think we need to at least tackle it head on. By the year of admittance, I like the year, and I like you breaking it up into 3 parts: the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I like that. I like keeping the credit the same for the speakers. Yeah, it may be a lot of credit, but we want to encourage quality speakers to continue doing their good work to the bar, and to get quality people. I think there's nothing wrong with putting, continuing the carrot there. On the non-CLE activities, I would have a list, but keep it where we can capture the metrics of it. Pro bono mentoring, that's sort of vague. Self-study, absolutely not. I mean, no. Now, a bar service, I mean, we already do a lot for the bar as bar counselors. And we already get a lot from it. I don't know if that would be considered lining our own pockets and giving ourselves CLE for being a bar counselor. I don't know how that would look. Writing bar journals, I mean, I think that's something that say that if you would write a 500-word article, you get X amount of credit hours. And the non-compliance timeline, I'm all for with tightening that up. And that goes back to the December thing. If we make it December is the last time, once every 3 years, well, if they want to go into January and February, they should probably have to pay a little late fee, just like we all do in many things. And then the one thing down here, it says, should we provide CLE of the specialty bar website, provide 1 hour of each specialty credit every year? I would just change that to say that you would get 3 hours every 3 years. You could do it all in 1 year, or you could do it one every year. But I don't know in your grand machination of how you're going to increase bar dues. I don't know if you also want to tie that into the increase in bar dues, about saying, look, we're going to have to increase bar dues because of this. But on the back end, we will give you, we're going to provide 1 hour of the specialty credits and maybe throw in there an hour of ethics. I don't know. I just, I know that's a separate topic, and I know I'm digressing, but anything that's free, I think that you may want to consider tying that into any type of additional fee to include the raising of our dues. So that's all my cards right there, Judge Keever. And you know where I stand. So.
Yeah, and I go through, I don't mind going through and talking a little bit about where, on the CLE year, I really wish we could do July 1st to June 30th, because there's so much CLE in June that for those persons that are short, they can find it in June. There's all the conferences that are going on, but I think that's too far removed from where we are. I think it would be terrible for the staff to try to figure out how you get up a half a year basically to change that. So I don't really care whether we use December 31st or February 28th. I think whatever's easiest for the staff, and if the staff doesn't want to have to deal with folks in December, then we should use February. That's a lot to put on the staff to try to figure out in December, get everybody on that. So it might be that February is the best as far as staff is concerned. I really prefer 2 years, but I know if we do 3 years, that really, as we get more and more members of the bar, that really spreads it out over the 3 years, and the staff doesn't have to deal with as many people. I absolutely agree there should be no carryover, because especially if it's 3 years, you're talking about year 1 and year 6 getting your CLE, and that's just crazy. It's bad enough that it's, that you get the 3 years, and so there'll be those folks that get it all 36 hours in 1 year because they didn't do anything. Specialty credits, I'd like to see us make 1 hour of the ethics be diversity. I think that's the better way of doing it. And since up until we talked about a diversity provision, we counted diversity classes as ethics classes anyway. So I just think we do 6 hours of ethics, one of which has to be diversity. And that gets us into that area, and in a way that makes it better. And in a way that Bert and I have talked about, it doesn't take away, that's 1 less hour taken away from your substantive areas of education. Whatever's the easiest thing for y'all to divide the lawyers into the reporting periods is the way to go. I think it's just all of us that are here, present now, and then we look forward subsequently. And Peter, I'm lost as to what's after that.
We have you already talked about diversity and inclusion. So
and then the amount of credit given to speakers. I know we talked about, and I don't remember what the provision currently is as to repeat presentations. But it seemed to me that we talked about not giving the same amount of credit for repeat presentations that we gave for the original presentation, and I think that's appropriate. You might
and
give
that's still That's the current rule is half. You get half for a repeat presentation.
I think half is a little bit high. But I mean, if we're given 3 hours now, I think 1 hour is sufficient for repeat presentations. But I think, and I think we do want to encourage people to actually do presentations. I'm kind of with Bert on this pro bono mentoring. You'd have to put some really strong rules in place in there in order to do that. But I think writing an article that is scholarly and accepted by the journal for publication, I think that's a great idea. And I think that would encourage some people to do that. Anything we can do to make the non-compliance better and to make it happen sooner is a good thing. And I think the idea of providing some free CLE, if we're going to include some CLE cost in their bar dues, is a good idea. And, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, I think it depends on where we are. But that's my thoughts. We've talked about this before. That's kind of my thoughts of where I've been.
Okay.
for a while.
Dayton, do you have any initial kind of instinctual feelings? I know you haven't had a chance to really give this a lot of thought.
Yeah, both of you are persuasive. And I apologize for the phone call in the background a while ago. I had trouble getting to the mute button quickly enough. I'm still technology challenged, I guess. I don't have strong feelings about the CLE year. I tend to be a rule follower, so whatever the authorities of the state bar have said over the years, I've tried to abide by that. And I tend to think in terms of what's easier for the staff and better administration processes for that kind of thing for enforcement. Today's the first time I've ever heard about extending the reporting period. And in my career, I've put such an emphasis on CLE for a lot of, basically the first third of my career in higher education. I was solo in-house, and I needed desperately to get CLE, not for the credits, but for the knowledge base, to do a really broad general practice. And it helped to have a national association that did really good CLE with volunteers from across the country. And I've had the same thing, kind of the same experience in North Carolina with the North Carolina Bar Association, providing most of my non-higher ed CLE work. And I go to an annual conference in the summer, as Judge Keever was saying, in June, and I could get, in 3 or 4 days' time, I could get more than 12 hours of CLE in a variety of subjects and take care of my minimum requirements for the most part. But I also did State Bar Association, North Carolina Bar Association CLE for other pieces that I needed. So if we're going to go to a 3-year reporting period, I'm going to be really curious about how many people in our profession put it off. I've carried forward credit because of what I just described to you, but I don't have any strong feelings about being able to carry it forward. I think we all ought to be doing the more than the minimum each year, and I don't have any problem being, losing. I don't feel like it's losing credits if we don't carry them forward from one year to the next. I feel like we ought to all be doing CLE every year anyway. As you were talking about the diversity, inclusion, and bias training, I think there may be pros and cons to both of the approaches that each of you described. On Judge Keever's idea of including it in the ethics presentations, I might take that a step further, and I'm just thinking out loud. Obviously haven't given it a lot of thought, but I would be interested in seeing us do some curriculum requirements where anybody doing ethics programs has to include a substantial element of diversity training in that ethics program, whether it's a 1 hour or a 3 hour block. That I just think diversity, inclusion, and bias issues ought to be part and parcel of our ethics training. I'm interested in the application fees. So are your rule change drafts going to have us have the state bar collecting an application fee from the course providers?
Yes, so that's the current plan is to have an application fee that's due when the application is submitted for review. And the way I have it drafted in the rules would be that it's based off of a fee schedule set by the board and approved by the council. So we have the ability to adjust it if our calculations are way off and we are not either bringing in way too much revenue or not enough revenue. I don't have the numbers in the rules, but the idea that I currently have would be something like 0 to 4 hours, up to 4 hours of CLE. If it's up to 4 hour course, it would be a $50 course application. Over 4 hours would be 100, or I can't remember if I have 75 or 100. If it was a course offered for free of any length, it would be a $25 application fee. An on-demand course, any course has to be approved for each type of course that it wants to be offered as. So if you have a live course that you then want to turn it into an on-demand course, that would be a $75 application fee, and that's good for 2 years. So you'd be able to keep it on demand for 2 years, and then you could recertify it. After certifying that the information is still accurate and timely, you can recertify it for another 2 year period for a fee for recertifying it. To have a fee for it, and all of that, those fees would be, if sponsors got those applications in at least 50 days prior to the course date. If it's between 49 and 0 days of the course date, there'd be a rush processing fee of $25. If it was submitted after the course date, there'd be a late processing fee of a certain amount too. So, but the advantage to all of that is there's no after the fact collecting of money. Right now we have to collect from the sponsors attendance fees after a course, and bill them and invoice them to pay. And then we have to invoice the lawyers. If the sponsors didn't pay, we have to invoice the lawyers for that $7 or whatever they might owe. And that becomes, a whole year's worth of bill collecting. And in this case, we'd have all of the funds up front. And then the sponsors would just have to report the attendance within 30 days of the course. And I'll share with you kind of my proposed little fee schedule for you guys to take a look at. But that's the idea that I have, and I think it could make courses cheaper for. I think it might be cheaper for everybody involved. We'll see.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and just let the course providers build it into their prices.
That's right, and they're already building in the attendance fees into their prices, and this, in theory, would be cheaper for them. If you got 15 people to show up for a course, that would be cheaper than paying the $3.25 per hour for each one of those people that showed up. So the question that we face that we're going to struggle with is, will this reduce course applications in a significant way, that the revenue that is brought in is significantly less than what we have been bringing in, making it difficult for us to support the support programs that we do now with, like, Equal Access to Justice Commission and the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism with the funds. And so the first year or two is going to be a very educated guess on what the fees should be, and then we might have to adjust it to continue to support those programs as we've been charged to do.
Thinking about bias, go ahead, Brett.
No, go ahead, Mr. Cole.
I was just thinking, I'll show my bias for Bar Association CLE. I've done almost all of my CLE through the Bar Association over the years, and I'm curious about what percentage of the total business for the state bar is NCBA programs.
Deborah can probably speak to that better. I know that they're the #1 provider of live courses here in North Carolina, at least normally. This year, obviously, in the past year, there weren't really any, but we have some out-of-state providers that offer a lot of on-demand and electronic courses, but as it relates to live programming, the Bar Association is far and away the biggest. That and the Mecklenburg Bar, right, Deborah?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Peter?
Yes, Bert?
So looking at what we're about to do and pivoting just a little bit, I would go ahead while you're working on your backwards planning, that this change will probably be the most significant change of the practical lawyer since the state bar added the $50 client security fund years ago, where I remember there were a lot of attorneys that were extremely upset that they were having to pay money because of other attorneys' mishaps and nefarious actions. I would plan on whatever we actually get decided during the publication to, prepare video, send it out to the bar counselors. I mean, we have to really do a full blast public information campaign, because it to try to get down to every single attorney, because this is going to shake up the way the business is done by a lot of people. Some folks are going to like it. Some folks aren't going to like it, but those are typically the folks who don't like anything anyway, if there's any change. So, I mean, we're just going to have to accept it, but just kill them with kindness and with information. So just something to think about when rolling it out. So.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of steps that we need to consider, especially we should consider them at the retreat. I think having a meeting with the Supreme Court before we get too far along in the process, so they are aware and we can understand what they would how they feel about some of these things, so we have a good idea on what's going to work and what's not. And then I agree. I think in addition to the kind of the public information campaign, having some actual, and it helps now to be on Zoom, having some open town halls to invite people who come and take public comment on this. I think it's probably a good idea. This one is such a big change that inviting public comment and really encouraging it for a period of time will be really important.
Peter, I think taking that temperature of the Supreme Court, it will be one of the most important things, because this is all for naught. The Supreme Court's like, we're going to sit on it if you send it up.
Right. And Dayton, just so I don't know if you're aware, we have to, if the board recommends rules, it will go to the State Bar Council. The State Bar Council would vote to publish those rules in the journal and online for comment for a whole quarter. Then that comment is received, and if there's changes, then there would be amendments to the proposal. If the council feels that there's no need for change, then the council could vote to adopt the rule, and then those adopted rules are sent to the Supreme Court, and they have to be approved by the Chief Justice. So the process takes more than half a year for it all to play out. So that's why kind of the time frame is we need to get this done in the first quarter, no later than the first quarter of 2022. Have a draft and a proposal in place to be able to move through the system to have it in place at the beginning of 2023, which was when we would have the CLE new rules in place for the 2023 year. It's intentionally slow just to make sure that everything is, that we get it right and that the lawyers have a chance to see it and comment on it. Inevitably, lawyers comment, don't read about it or choose not to read about it until something goes into effect, and then they have lots of comment about it. But we try to encourage the comment before, during the amendment process, so we can get, learn from their suggestions. So I have we're at 1:30 here. So what I'm going to do is I have a draft. It is 43 pages long. It is in track changes. So I'll send it for you guys to look at. You don't have to edit it. It's just for your review. It's the entire revision of the CLE rules, and it's long because there's a lot of stuff that's deleted. So it's not like it's not 43 pages worth of reading. The CLE rules were originally designed as having one set in section 1500 that were the rules, and then one set in 1600 that were the regulations. But they all kind of blended together over time, and rules, there was not a clear breakdown of where things should go. So the amendments would eliminate rule 16, section 1600 completely, and just have them all in one section. So you would know where your CLE rules are. They're all in section 1500. And we delete a lot of stuff in order to condense it down. So I'll
Peter,
send
can I
that
ask
to you
you a
for your
quick
review.
question?
Sure.
The new rollout of the bar programming, the CLE online format, which looks awesome. We would be able to massage that and change it up to include a 3-year period, so you could see the 3-year period, and whether or not they cross over calendar years, you could see that all on one screen. I mean,
Yes,
unless
yeah,
you've got so many. So
The company that we are working with, we're maintaining, it's a constant relationship. So they make changes as needed, and we would just have a new programming, new development plan to have this all planned out and prepared for 2023. And there'll be additional, programming costs for that, and we're going to propose retaining some funds in our budget to be able to pay for that. But it's actually, a lot of it is making it more simple. So it shouldn't be as difficult because eliminating the attendance fees and all of the invoicing, all of that stuff will make things in the annual report form. Eliminating that will certainly make things easier. And so the elimination of the annual report form will save us a lot of programming hassle. If the system says the lawyer is compliant, then they don't have to send in a form to say that the system says they're compliant. So a lot of that stuff will make things more streamlined. I think won't be too hard to program. Yeah,
I think that would make the 3-year period a lot easier to digest if they can just see it all at once.
That's right.
What they have and what they're missing. So
that's the plan. Yeah, and we've already been in touch with them about the programmers about this. That this would, we had to program it now as the rules are, which was unfortunate to have to do it twice. But they would be prepared to redevelop it for any new rules that we put in place. Well, I think that's all I've got today. I know that we're out of time. I want to give more thought, and if you could, I certainly appreciate all of your comments. If you can give a lot of thought to the CLE year question, I think that's important. I know that there certainly would be some staff difficulty for ending December 31st. Staff's trying to take their holiday vacations. Ending on New Year's Eve, would people be in the office to be able to answer calls or questions for someone on their last day of reporting? We just need to think that through a little bit. But I do appreciate how clean that would be, just have a very clear calendar year. So I'll look at other states on that too, and we can kind of come back and revisit that. Just give that some thought. Yeah.
Deborah doesn't have New Year's plans, does she?
Not anything. Yeah. I live a very boring life.
Well, I'll send you this proposed rules to take a look at, and I'll send you this list so you can think about that. Again, I'll send that to the full committee to take a look at too, and we'll get back together with the other subcommittee as soon as we can, and then schedule another meeting. I'd like to meet perhaps this subcommittee could find a way to meet again before the end of the year, and then we could get together for a retreat at the beginning of next year, and for another hour to kind of drill down some of this draft language.
So Peter and Deborah, when y'all are looking at dates for us to meet again, just know that I've got new judges training the week of December the 6th, and I will not be available that week
Okay,
at
okay,
all.
okay, thank you.
And we'll send out some proposed dates just to look at, see if it's going to be possible. December's always tough, so we'll give it a try. Thank you all very much
Thank you.
for being here.
Thank you.
And I'll get the stuff sent out to you this afternoon.
Thanks for letting me join you.
Oh, thanks,
Thanks,
Dayton.
Dayton.